A gray April day chases the tents with its cold, humid wind. It is the Tuesday before Easter in the Christian world, but that does not prevent Americans from ordering us to go out on the camp road with our personal belongings. Angry, we pick up our bundles and prepare to leave at the appointed time, after the final check that has left us without shine. There are fewer than 500 non-commissioned officers left, and now we silently say goodbye to this field that has almost become a second home. Yes, the Americans have time. It is already noon, and we are still camped at the door without food. After the initial disturbances, which turned to indifference, the whole crowd now threatens to erupt in wild irritation. They think we are fools. The first voices are heard. Let us return, the impatient demand, but the wind continues to blow its eternal song imperturbably. Let's go, Bill H. shouts. Turner opens the door after hours of waiting. We march in a southerly direction through rows of at least 200 American soldiers on both sides of the road, passing posts, Czechs, and Austrians. Let's go, shouts Bill H. Turner opens the door after hours of waiting. We march in a southerly direction through rows of at least 200 American soldiers who are on both sides of the road, passing Czechs and Austrians, a colorful collection of European nationalities, all in German uniforms. We leave the collective camps of Cherbourg and arrive at the highway where we arrived on December 7th, 1944. How peaceful, yes, almost understanding, the soldiers of the front march alongside us today. All their weapons are on their shoulders. Not a single word of hatred comes from their lips. In silence, friends and enemies enter Cherbourg. Not even the French react at our appearance. Without being disturbed, we arrive at the port and stumble along the seafront along the port until suddenly we are ordered to stop in front of 3 anchored ships of the now. A chilling horror seizes the thoughts of the prisoners, but we have no time. Strange hands forcibly put us in our pockets and throw all the handmade knives, boxes, and cartons into the water, while the officers accompanying us board one of the ships and greet the captain as an old comrade. Shortly after, we are pushed in double rows through a small walkway, and, through an iron frame, we enter the interior of the American troop transport Thomas Marshall. It is 4 in the afternoon when a voice over the loudspeaker draws our attention to the gigantic mountain of cookie boxes stored in a corner of the large room in which we are quartered. Everyone is free to take as much as they want, says the voice, eliciting incredible laughter. Still like pilgrims to a sacred mountain, we head towards the corner, and the pile melts like snow in the March sun. An incredible confusion then unfolds. Soon the Americans appear and, with their presence, restore order to the crowd. The old tent groups are in front of 5-story bunk beds built with iron bars and canvas. In each bed, there is a blanket and a life jacket that can be used as a pillow. The bunk beds are located along the walls of the ship. In the center of the room are tables and benches reminiscent of a barracks dining room. Right next to the room is the kitchen, where the cooks are busy. The sink and the toilets are below, at the water level. The ship makes a splendid impression, although its facilities seem quite unusual for landlubbers. At 5 o'clock, 2 guards arrive. They sit in our room at a table in the back, between the stairs that go down to the lower level and the entrance to the kitchen. They hold their weapons tightly. 10 minutes later, they realize that their presence is ridiculous and leave their weapons behind when the officer responsible for the prisoners enters the room with the captain and inspects his guards, dismissing them satisfied with our conduct and the cleanliness of our cabins, with kind words, and then explains that no one on board will go hungry, that there are provisions in abundance. With this explanation, he wins over all the prisoners, who express their enthusiasm with spontaneous applause. Shortly after 6, the hawker calls the first diners to receive their food. Who would have thought that there would be a mad rush to the kitchen in response to the hawker's call? Then, the companions line up without pushing or rushing against each other. This can be attributed to the distribution of the cookies and the speech of the American officer. In addition, it is an old custom that, when there is abundance, no one shows a special interest in things, although cooking is hawker's game, since all he has to do is stir the food prepared in boiling water. He and his assistants work until 8 in an uninterrupted service, while the men from the hunger camps keep reappearing God, knows how many times with their empty dishes. Finally, the biggest glutton lies on his cot with a full stomach while we four friends gather around a table. The electric lamps illuminate the faces of the prisoners, who are satisfied with God and the world. Now we know the purpose of the interrogations. I inaugurate our first conversation since we left the camp. They're taking us away from the mainland because we still represent a threat to them, Schultz says in a hoarse and dejected voice. If only they don't take us to England. Hocker joins the conversation. I don't think so, because we're on an American ship and, apparently, our guard to going back to the USUU. On leave. I dismiss Hocker's fear. As far as I'm concerned, they can take us to the moon. The important thing is that the hunger has ended. Siegfried does not hide his joy at the abundant food on board. If you ever eat enough, I would like to finally hear something sensible come out of your mouth. Schultz snaps at him. That the war is practically lost for us does not change anything with our long stay in France. But why did they not send us to the United States before, especially since the danger of being handed over to the French seemed quite real soon? It is true that in the United States they will not treat us like vacation guests. But for any work we do, at least they will give us enough to eat, something that never has been nor will be in France. I have felt it myself, and today I am grateful that fate put me on this ship. You know I won't kiss any American's rear, but I like them much better than the French. For us prisoners of war, it is very simple. We only have to survive the chaos, unless someone intends to commit suicide. I am far from that, quite the opposite. I feel obliged to stay healthy in order to serve my homeland longer. That is the mission that fate has entrusted to us, and that is why I'm going to look for a couple of cookies, as long as there are any in the warehouse. Siegfried says, and heads with a smile towards the mountain of cardboard boxes, now much reduced. Impressed by Siegfried's point of view, the three of us look with satisfaction at the linoleum-covered table. I admire him, above all, that he has been able to express it so clearly in so few words. It has taken me weeks to resolve these issues. Schultz, have you digested what I gave you to swallow? Siegfried asks as he sits down after placing a box full of cookies between us. I have only determined that you are beginning to think. Eat another dish, and then maybe you can imagine the map of North America. Then I will show you an area that is not far from Siberia, but that is just as cold and sparsely populated. Schultz explains with complete seriousness. I know what you mean, but I prefer to hunt bears in Alaska than stay in France and clean garbage with an empty stomach. Siegfried laughs with satisfaction. Maybe he is right. Schultz turns to Hocker and me as he takes a cookie. Siegfried's opinions coincide with mine, I explain. Satisfied with this conversation, I only need a recipe for bear meat. It is actually a shame that old Brilla is not with us. He was an excellent shooter. Hocker regrets the loss of our friend, so I give him a sympathetic look. A shiver runs through the ship without us realizing it. The Thomas Marshall has left the port of Cherbourg and sails at full speed towards the sea, towards the European continent. Our homeland, our families, everything that is important and dear to us sinks into the night and fog behind us, while the fury of this terrible war slowly but surely devours our hearts. Around me, I hear the sounds of a savage battle. My eyes, blinded by the flash of the grenades, are buried in the sandbags in front of my observation post. The murderous fire bursts from the fighter planes and crashes against the steel helmets of the attacking soldiers. A frightening-looking enemy grabs me by the wrists and says to me calmly, "Come on, helmet, wake up, otherwise your coffee will get cold." "Are you crazy?" I say to him, looking furiously at Siegfried, and I immediately realize that I was dreaming. Around me, I hear the noise of the ventilation system, and the life jacket indicates the mark on my forehead, where I sought refuge from the electric lights to which I was not accustomed. The room resonates with the metallic sound of dishes. "Damn it," I say, and I get out of my bunk to drink my coffee, while Siegfried looks at me shaking his head. "Is this stopped?" I ask Hocker and Schultz, still completely confused, but feeling a terrifying pressure around my heart, because, at most, the ship could only have reached England. "Have you just realized, sleepyhead?" Hocker smiles comfortably. "You have no idea what that could mean for us," I ask, amazed at their faces of satisfaction. "So what could it mean?" Schultz shrugs indifferently. "They will unload us in England, idiots. Little by little, I become hostile. Blessed are those who sleep a lot, because they're the first to realize what has been tormenting others for hours, Shorts explains in good humor. Drink your coffee, helmet, and calm down. We don't have to go down here. Hawker slaps me on my flushed cheeks. Why is the ship stopped? The guards say that we are waiting off England and that we will probably join a convoy tonight to the United States. I finally get a plausible answer from Siegfried, and I can have breakfast in peace while our friends are in the bathroom shaving and washing. A voice sounds through the loudspeaker and announces that after 8 o'clock we can go up on deck for an hour in groups of 100 men. Feverishly, we try to get rid of the soap that we have brought from Cherbourg, but we do not succeed. Finally, we realize that only salt water comes out of the pipes and that it does not react to the usual soap, but there is enough soap from the ship to quickly solve the problem. Exactly at 8 o'clock, the door through which we entered yesterday opens and an avalanche of 100 interested spectators rushes onto the deck, pushed towards the railing. I look up, and yes, there, wrapped in a soft veil of fog, lies England. Meanwhile, the sun has risen and there is great agitation throughout the ship, crew, guards, and prisoners. For the first time, we are shoulder to shoulder with a typical seaman's door. Siegfried comes toward me, my faithful echo from the Ragfoot Squadron. "What do you think of the Navy?" he asked me proudly, now that he finally feels the deck under his feet. "So far, excellent, unemployed coolly," I answer in good spirits. There are many among us who have suddenly become globetrotters against their will. Several companions with gloomy appearances catch my attention. You are right. It is the older ones who are worried, while the younger ones are clearly enthusiastic about the spirit of adventure. I added, observing. "What do you promise us in Estados Unidos?" he asked with a frown. "It is difficult to say," I answer, contemplating the sea, which seems infinite. "Well, it cannot be worse than what we have had so far," he consoles himself. "Certainly not. Estados Unidos is not a closed group. It is the melting pot of the world. They will not receive us only with hatred, especially since the country was not touched by the war and has many citizens of German descent." I confirm my agreement. "Let us be surprised," he suggests confidently and pushes me down, since our time on deck is over. After a quiet nap, we meet at 4 o'clock for coffee. Despite the mass production, Hawker knows how to get the best out of powdered coffee. "It tastes like Mom's," says Schultz, and that says a lot, because in this aspect he is a true expert. There are many cookies to go with the coffee. Among the Americans on board, it is said that the Germans not only know how to make war, but also how to eat. The man next to me, a tall Bavarian, comments, "What funny people, these Americans." Schultz continues, "When I fell into their hands, they immediately gave me something to eat. It was a very strong chicken soup with lots of meat. The man who brought it to me was so moved by his hospitality that I feared he would burst into tears. Just when I finished the soup and wanted to start with the precious meat, another came and kicked the cup, throwing it out of my hands, so that the pieces of meat went flying through the air. Then 3 days passed before they gave me anything more to eat. Now we can eat until we burst, but I think as soon as we land, we will be hungry again. You should have eaten the meat first, but I imagine you spent hours stirring the soup, and that angered the American. Therefore, eat now, Schultz, so that you have something in your ribs when we are hungry again," Siegfried advises him eagerly. "Later we will have to feed on the fat of our intestines." "You are absolutely right. Pass the box of cookies." He follows this advice without delay. 2 hours later, Hawker distributes dinner. The deck door is tightly closed, and 2 guards sit back at the table. This unusual precaution by the Americans does not bother us. Everyone regrets not having a belt in their stomach, because the food is very good. Even Schultz demonstrates what he is capable of by eating again and again. The 3 of us approach the kitchen door until Hawker raises a finger as a warning. That is going to upset the stomach. "Be careful, eating machines, otherwise you will explode." Curiously, after the 4th ration, we cannot eat any more. Are we full? We ask ourselves in amazement. "Impossible," each one says to himself. "Then we still want to eat." "That is enough, friends." Schultz collects the dishes. The stomach has to get used to it again. If you demand too much of it, you will have to pay the price. Tired and full to the top button of our shirts, we get into our bunks at 8:30 p.m. The engines start running. The ship shakes, and water splashes on board. Goodbye, Europe, dear homeland, may God protect you. Just after breakfast, some sergeants are ordered to go on deck. A rescue operation is being carried out. The hazy weather greets us as we exit through the small outdoor door. Around us, ships of all kinds sail westward. A convoy, a feast for submarines. We have a long way to go, and there is a possibility that we will have to abandon ship without reaching our destination. A scruffy member of the crew begins his speech, which is immediately translated by an interpreter for this purpose. They must receive instructions on how the lifeboats assigned to them will be lowered in the water. I remind you that, in case of emergency, no one will be able to worry about you, so I ask you to pay close attention to how things should be done. I also recommend that you organize the maneuver among yourselves so everyone knows to which boat they are assigned. There are enough ships around us that can pick us all up, if necessary. By the way, our people are placing rope ladders around the ship. We can't do more for your safety right now. Please follow my instructions carefully. That's all that's missing. May the good Admiral Donuts send his gray wolves after our throats, Schultz whispers to me after the maneuver is over, and we are once again on our way below. If they find us, they will go after the larger ships. Our small steamer belongs to the Liberty class and is not worth a torpedo. I console myself in him. Your brother's from the Navy? He asks me, remembering a conversation from days before. Yes, but not in these waters anymore. Since they killed the major, I confirm. Well, then you can sink into a watery grave and not have to worry about thinking that it was your own brother who sent you to the bottom of the ocean, he says. Wow, that's harsh. Why isn't this ship marked by a red cross? The first infraction by the Americans against the Geneva Convention comes to mind. I don't understand it either. They could make these small, I understand it. They could make these small ships immune to German torpedoes, he says as we reach our bunks. We must send the interpreter to the officers, perhaps to at least raise a Red Cross flag. I see a chance to protect ourselves. I'll talk to him about it later. Schultz nods and goes toward his bunk. At 2 in the afternoon, Hocker is among us again, as curious as the first time. We are on the deck of the ship and look towards a navy that plows the calm ocean in a zigzagging course as if guided by the hand of a magician. Siegfried never tires of explanations. We are entering an area of bad weather, he says, looking in all directions, his ears slightly pointing forward and his brow furrowed. His rust-red hair flutters in wind. It doesn't look good for at least half of our companions, he indicates, somewhat dramatically with a mocking smile on his attractive face. How so for half? I ask, disturbed, because they are certainly going to vomit when the dance begins. He explains it to me calmly and slowly. The ship raises its bow and then lets it sink slowly. The ship does not have enough springs. Schultz swallows suspiciously and continues with a bitter smile. The ship has just caught air. Siegfried smiles maliciously. My eyes slide across the aquatic desert, somewhat disturbed, while slight nausea takes hold. Small gray-black hills pass the ship, sometimes splashing as if shocked in front of the deck. What a disaster, Schultz grunts, when the first splash comes over the railing and throws drops of salt water on his freshly shaved skin. It's just the beginning. Siegfried can no longer contain a smile. Look there, the first ones are starting to vomit. He shouts with malicious and unbridled joy. Shut your mouth, damn it. Oh no, exclaims Schultz and leans over the railing. I'm also dizzy as a dog, and the others laugh. So far, Hull? Siegfried asks in a mocking tone. You will know it when the first wave reaches your face, I answer, disgusted with everything. I'm going to lie down. Maybe that way I will feel better. Schultz moves away from the railing and staggers as if drunk, and I follow him without delay. Hour after hour, I am tied to my bed. Only in a horizontal position can I withstand the rocking, but my head throbs as if 1,000 little devils sat on my stomach and pushed me towards my throat as soon as I try to get up. I don't feel like eating, and all conversations are unpleasant. In a bad mood, I look at the iron walls of the ship and listen to the whisper of the water until sleep takes this vile disease from my consciousness. A restless night is behind me and the other victims of seasickness, but this morning I feel somewhat better. After washing in the disgusting bathroom, I go see Hocker to receive my breakfast. Man, Your face is as white as a wall. He greets me, worried. It's quite strong. Let me tell you about it. I wave my hand as if I'd been beaten. Wait a moment. I'll prepare coffee. Meanwhile, take these Frankfurter sausages and don't let anyone see you. He puts a long, thin can in my pocket. I give up and sit on stool. Hocker flutters around his kingdom as if the life of a dear brother were at stake. Indifferently, I look around the room. There is an abundant supply of cans of spinach and meat piled in a corner. For men are busy opening cans. Even without being seasick, this type of life would make me vomit. Now that we have a lot to eat, it doesn't taste good. Is this what happens to rich people with a bad stomach? Now drink this. The vendor hands me a large cup from which the strong smell of coffee reaches my nose. And if you have any other wish that I can fulfill, you know I will. Thank you, Willie, and take care, won't you? Don't you feel anything with this damn rocking? I wonder about his seemingly normal situation, which does not seem to affect him at all. Schultz, come here, so I can take care of him too. By the way, Siegfried has been put to work by the Americans, since some of the dishwashers are absent due to seasickness. He gives me the latest news as I leave, and I feel very grateful for his friendship, but the vendor's coffee is not for me. I have barely swallowed it when it turns around and goes out on deck towards the salty element. Schultz isn't lucky either. Together we kneel toward the north and offer everything to the gods of water. Everywhere, in every corner, there are men hanging from the deck, vomiting everything but their souls. The guards disappeared a long time ago and exchanged their weapons for cloths. Friends and enemies are united under the same suffering, seasickness. When Siegfried comes on deck during his break at 2 in the afternoon, it seems that the fun for our condition has ended. Come on, get away from the railing and go to the center of the ship, he says in a voice that admits no reply. Sit here. I'm going to get your blankets and coats. Wait for me. He orders like a worried father who is fed up with his children's nonsense. Shivering from cold and seasickness, we lean on a tool chest in the middle of the ship while the Thomas Marshall bounces on waves the size of hills. The wind speed has increased. The mountains of clouds hang low and dark in the day, says Siegfried upon returning with our blankets and coats. Wrap yourselves up and put on your life jackets. Don't look forward or backward, but directly at the sky, or close your eyes tightly. This is the best place on the whole ship. Downstairs there is vomit everywhere that makes even the strongest sick. Without protesting, we follow his advice, but this unusual discomfort does not leave us. It is true that after an hour we are somewhat better, but perhaps it is only our imagination. In any case, there is no longer joy in living. Around us, there is only misery. Only small groups remain here and there as observers. Vomit everything, comrade, so you will have peace, I hear some smart Aleck suggest, but be careful, another warns, raising a finger and showing his forced smile. If a brown ring comes out, you must swallow it immediately, because it is your dinner. Dinner takes place in a manner unworthy of humans, and vomiting follows in a senseless rhythm. The men are shrunken, pale as death, before their plates, from which soup spills, and the tables and benches are covered, but no fight occurs. Everyone is sick as dogs and stripped of their will. At 9 o'clock, the captain of the ship announces that during the night the storm will arrive, which means waves of size number 10, gentlemen. Siegfried comments, looking at Schultz and me with regret. I will get cookie tins with removable lids for you. Hocker thoughtfully suggests providing Hocker with an empty cookie tin and another full one, which are squeezed between the diagonal bars of the bunk. I await sleep as the savior from anguish and torment for days. The Thomas Marshall has made its way through the storm-tossed sea. Powerful waves break against its deck and tear off everything that is not nailed down or tied. Black clouds like night push against its main mast, and pour torrents of furious tears fall mercilessly on its steel body. Heaven and hell, storm and water have joined in a wild hell of natural force. The brave ship staggers westward, groaning and threatening to break into 1,000 pieces, while inside it the most complicated creations of an almighty God have been reduced to the most pitiful creatures, who seek a foothold and spit out the last juices of their bodies. Weak and miserable, a pile of lifeless flesh and bones, whose internal functions have been reversed and who are unable to resist this ridiculous ailment. I lie on a small piece of canvas during the long hours of endless days and nights, totally exhausted, until I am ready to exhale what little life remains in me. It is not very different for Schultz and the rest of the seasick. The ventilation system does not work due to a technical problem, and the air is a mixture of oil, grease, coffee, cigarette smoke, and the vomit of the seasick. The tables, benches, pots, pans, and boxes have come loose and rattle around the room, as if under the influence of a magnetic force. Now we are finally clear that the cabin, hermetic to the weather, is an evil, windowless cell under whose iron floor the ocean stirs, and whether we want it or not, there is no escape, because above, the sea snorts as if the day of judgment has begun at the same time. A message spreads throughout the earth that could serve to go around the world. It even reaches us in our deep hold. The President of the United States has died from a stroke. This news hits us like a torpedo in our ship's room, but now we are not able to reflect on or discuss the consequences. It is 3 a.m, and the order to put on our life jackets comes over the loudspeaker. The storm has intensified. The Thomas Marshall is, for all intents and purposes, a toy for the unbridled elements, completely apathetic and driven only by an annoying fear that comes from the most remote corner of my heart. I act according to orders and put on my life jacket. Poker and Siegfried swing out of the bunks, and we place ourselves on the floor, ready to help Schultz and me if we fall. Prepared to die, Hocker comments with a serious face about the situation. As we leave the bunks, the ship, which is rocking furiously, receives a thunderous blow to the bottom. It must be a torpedo or a mine exploding. Immediately, there is total chaos. Seized by panic, those in front run towards the stairs and pound their fists against the closed bulkhead. The next moment, a voice over the loudspeakers prevents the chaos. Attention, there is no reason to be alarmed. It is just a swell that has pushed the bow of the ship out of the water and crashed it against a huge wave. In 5 hours, the storm will have passed, and we will be back in the karma zone. There is no reason to be alarmed. There is no reason to be alarmed. In 5 hours, we will be in the karma zone, with our heads down and a little ashamed, but freed for the moment from the pressing fear. Everyone returns to their bunks, but outside the storm and the ocean continue to roar with the same intensity. It is 8 a.m. of this praiseworthy day, April 14th. Schultz and I are sitting with our backs against the toolbox on deck, under the wonderful sun, looking relieved at the infinite but finally calm water desert. Our brave Thomas Marshall has proven to be a tough guy in the last days of the storm. With a bearable rocking, today it heads west again in the company of its brothers and sisters, while its strange human cargo of prisoners comes out to recover. Naturally, it is quite cool first thing in the morning, but it is a clear day with only a few wisps of clouds chased by the wind that has calmed. A series of harmless waves spread out ahead. The ship sails with the wind at its back. Meanwhile, Hocker is busy as a cook for the Americans and competes with Siegfried to help the two of us failures get back on our feet. One tries to outdo the other by stealing delicacies. Condensed milk and wonderful jam rolls make up our breakfast. Oka has promised salmon and mayonnaise at 10 o'clock, and Siegfried will take care of lunch. Considering everything, we have reason to be satisfied with how the day is going, but we are not. At least Schultz is not. It's bad enough that they tear your tail off, he comments, using a vulgar expression that I had never heard him use before. Now that we have finally freed ourselves from the eternal worry about food, we have to vomit our guts out. Why do they spare us the food, he asks, annoyed. In that case, they would keep it. I explain to him with a mocking laugh. You cannot hold them responsible for the storm. It would be unfair. Look at you. You are on your way to kiss the asses of the Americans because they don't let you starve in their trash can. He hisses at me. Surprised, I look at him more closely. He is very pale. He has isolated red spots on his protruding cheekbones. The deer brown eyes are almost extinguished in the sockets, and deep wrinkles radiate from the corners of the eyes. Deep blue shadows extend under the eyes. The temples seem slightly sunken and are suddenly covered with gray hair. The man looks very sick and terribly exhausted. My God, I think about what he must have suffered, and an indescribable feeling of compassion invades my heart. But, Schultz, I say with good intentions, what's wrong with you? I know you like that. Forgive me, but everything is unpleasant to me. If only they had left us in Sherbuck 2 in the afternoon. Hocker and Siegfried join us. The American cooks have given them the afternoon off. Do you realize that it is getting colder? Asks Siegfried sympathetically when he sees me shivering. I have felt it for a long time, Schultz replies in a hoarse voice. Do you know why? He asks, full of emotion. I already told you. We are heading toward Alaska. Schultz wants to overcome it, but this time he is completely wrong. Chief, our march route will take us to Boston, where I have relatives, or directly to New York. By the way, I have seen the maps that hang below the upper deck on the starboard side, where the officers and helmsmen are, right between the third and fourth railing of the wall. You can see it yourself. No one will say anything. This can is almost in German hands. We have some pretty daring dogs among us. They run as if the ship were theirs. Stop imitating Siemens. I want to know why it is getting colder. Schultz interrupts Siegfried's smooth talk. You are ungrateful for the good news, but I will still tell you. Today we had an interesting and unusual encounter. Don't dramatize it. I join in too. Are we going to meet the icy Stalin? Perhaps more icy and without a mustache. Icebergs, he says ironically. And what? Asks Schultz. Maybe we'll run into one of them, and then our asses will be on vacation. Then I must disappoint you if you are so willing to leave this life. No. Jokes aside, there are supposed to be 2 gigantic pieces of ice. The captain is well-oriented. There will be no mermaids. Schultz. Siegfried rejoices gratefully for the change. If you have looked at the map, how far is the New World? I ask with interest because I still long for solid ground despite the good care on board. We have completed approximately half of the trip. Siegfried notes with a dejected air. Then how is that possible? We already have 10 days. I know that there are more than 4,000 miles from Cherbourg to New York, and a ship can make the trip in 14 days at most. I express my doubts. Exactly, you said it. A ship, but we travel together, and we only go as fast as the slowest ship. In addition, we are still at war, and because of the submarines, we follow a zigzag course. In addition, we have lost time due to the storm. You see that my calculations are correct. He tries to convince me that if we had good weather, just for the 2 of you, as far as I'm concerned, the ship could go around the world, Hocker confesses, and looks shyly to the side, waiting for an avalanche of protests. But neither Schultz nor I are bothered by it. On the contrary, one could agree with him if it weren't for the horrible seasickness. Iceberg in sight. The call resonates throughout the ship. Iceberg to starboard. And everything else is forgotten. Friends and enemies crowd in dense groups huddled against the starboard railing, looking with the same sensation towards the west. It is a natural iceberg that melts, at least for the moment, the artificial icebergs of the people on board the Thomas Marshall. But there is nothing more to see than a blinding white mass that is no larger or higher than a sugar loaf, rising above the dark water. But still people now speak cheerfully in different languages to each other. Iceberg, what a magical word at 3 o'clock. The sun is fantastically illuminating in the southwest, the crystal colossus that keeps growing and that, due to the imposing view, awakens in us memories of the frightening shipwrecks of yesteryear that appeared in our 4th grade reading book. The story of the immigrant who found a 4-leaf clover and wasted so much time that he did not pay attention to his ship and crashed into an iceberg and lost everything. I hear someone behind me say that he must have liked that story a lot if he still remembers it, and I nudge Hocker, who turns with a smile to look at the person who has spoken. That was around 1912. In any case, shortly before the First World War, a luxurious English ship on its maiden voyage crashed into an iceberg and sank with the richest people aboard. Yes, it's true, I've heard it. Your neighbor remembers it. Does that have anything to do with the Blue Band? A third voice chimes in. No, my friend, a 4th one joins the conversation. There was a millionaire on board with whom the captain was in love, but he had no luck with her, so he steered the ship on purpose against the iceberg. Not with the engine's force. I interrupt him to tease him. Idiot, he murmurs arrogantly and continues. He wanted the whole offspring to drown like rats. Stop, that's not entirely true. The first one counters. What is it that's not entirely true? The romantic defends his newly discovered love story. I know it because I'm older than you. The ship was called Titanic, and at that time, it was a kind of world wonder in the field of maritime travel. It is true, leave love out of this. As far as the rich are concerned, the only thing that matters is money. In this case, it was the shipping company's blue ribbon. I have read the book, so I am well informed on the subject. Another listener states bluntly, "So you have read the book? Do you think the truth is always found in books?" I know it better, you can be sure. The stubborn man insists on his tall tale. Shut your mouth, or the iceberg will sink before us. Ashamed, the reader finishes the sentence, but the iceberg does not move because of the nonsense that its observers say. Proud and inaccessible, it continues its course while two more appear on the horizon, taken by respectful awe that no one can take their eyes off these ice giants. At 5:40 p.m., we are parallel to the two majestic mountains to the north, about 4 miles away. Only a third of its mass protrudes from the water, Siegfried explains to us, which unleashes a great discussion. Then you can calculate exactly the height of the cold wanderers. Another one behind us takes up the subject again. For that you have to know how high the part that protrudes from the water is. Another interested commentator adds that that is nonsense, that if 2/3 were under the water, it would have already hit the bottom a long time ago. The old know-it-all informs, and the four of us silently decide to pull his leg. Look there! I scream as if I'm possessed. On the central glacier, a polar bear is climbing. She has her cubs with her. Hocker echoes my screams. Where? Where? Everyone pushes toward the railing. Push so carelessly, Siegfried grunts. The beast is big enough to be seen from anywhere. My eyes are old. I can't see her very well, but I feel sorry for the poor bears. They must have missed the opportunity to jump when the Colossus was formed in the North Pole. Schultz joins our circle of liars, which further stimulates the intensive search on the immense mass of ice. Only the devil knows where they are. Someone complains behind me. Man, don't you have eyes? We hear the voice of the fairy tale, there on the left, in the projection of the great crack. I discovered them a long time ago. The man boasts with the same bravado and conviction with which he told the story of the captain. But Hocker cannot maintain the falsehood, and a laugh makes tears spring from his eyes and mucus sprouts from his nostrils. Immediately, Siegfried and I join him in a malicious laugh until it becomes uncomfortable, because those we deceived are furious with us. Today, the third day without a storm, the Thomas Marshall sails through the blue waters of the Atlantic with a beautiful and magical red sunrise toward the east. Trusted dolphins accompany the ship, gladdening the hearts of those on board with their presence. Generously, the companions throw cookies to the insatiable mouths of the great gray and black ones, who seem to give thanks with their fun dives. Groups of prisoners have formed who consider certain dolphins as their own and even give them names. Again and again, the faithful marine animals show their attractive backs before diving and swimming under the ship to feed on cookies from their sponsors on the other side. Leaning on the railing, I think of the poor fish that, a few weeks ago, these same men who now feed them would have risked their necks to snatch a fin from. Why are you so pensive? A familiar voice sounds in my ear. Oh, what a pleasure, Doctor. Braun in person, so early in the morning. I greet my philosophy professor. The doctor is hanging in Flensburg in his closet. He applauds with his large false teeth. The important thing is that your mind is here and remains intact. The hat is just for show. I console him by saying that it is true. Have you survived the dizziness? He asks, and throws a cookie to a beautiful dolphin. They're the first animals we have seen in a long time, and I love animals. He apologizes for his frivolity upon noticing my surprise. Yes, we have him too. I nod with double meaning and look toward some point in the infinite water. I see that you don't enjoy the game, but you are right. We will never reunite so easily with the silly humans. He consoles me. People forget easily. Perhaps it is better that way. At least in most cases, I explain reconciled. In some cases, yes, but that they have forgotten to mark this American ship with a red cross is not only a punishable idiocy, but a blow against all international agreements. I just read in a magazine that someone lent me that the victors will judge us and declare us guilty of war crimes. He goes into political waters. Let them write what they want. Paper is patient. When the slaughter is over, they will be as murderous as we are. I hope I'm not bothering, says Schultz respectfully as he joins us. No, I assure him. Braun is also annoyed that the ship is not marked. The interpreter spoke with the Americans about it, but they have not given him any explanation. It is better that we do not make this a matter of state. Otherwise, we will harm the good atmosphere in our ranks. As long as no one is aware of the danger in which we swim, they will not worry, says Schultz, always worried about preventing others from being upset. Do you think we are unnecessarily exposed to danger? Braun perks up. This Atlantic Ocean is a war zone. According to the Geneva Convention, the Americans have a responsibility to inform the headquarters of the German Navy through Geneva about the transport, just like in the transport of wounded. Unfortunately, none of the belligerent powers inform their soldiers about these provisions. The reason is obvious. Some soldiers would prefer imprisonment to a heroic death if they knew the favorable conditions that await them behind barbed wire thanks to the Geneva Convention. What good are these agreements on paper if no one respects them? Don't say that, Braun. I had the opportunity to observe for 4 months what was happening in a prisoner camp. The inmates were mostly English pilots, sailors, and commandos. I can only tell you that they lacked nothing. The direction of the German camp changed every time a big shot arrived for an inspection or when a neutral control commission appeared. Did they also have a brothel? Siegfried intrudes on our serious conversation, which provokes a look of disgust for Braun. Well, overlooking Siegfried's rudeness, we will soon see to what extent the Americans comply with international agreements in their own territory, while Braun is called by his friends. The three of us are left alone. Meanwhile, the sky has clouded over and a strong wind blows over the sea. I imagine the land here must be very expensive, so they simply built towards the sky. But I wouldn't want to live in those honeycombs. I like the small houses on the other side of the river, Hocker declares. I agree. Siegfried intervenes. As impressive as those cement piles are, I would not live there even if it was free.